Radio Spaetkauf. Berlin news in English.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Radio Spaetkauf. This is RSxEAB, and the topic tonight is private profit in public spaces. I have a co-host and a few amazing guests here, and also a wonderful live audience. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out. My name's Daniel Stern, and on Radio Spaetkauf, we've been doing the news in this city for, I think, about a dozen years. And over that time, I did a lot of complaining. And there's nothing wrong with complaining. It's an important part of being a Berliner, I think. But at some point, you started to feel like only the bad news made the news. That we were talking about when things went wrong, or that we weren't focusing on the good news when it happened because it just wasn't really as catchy of a headline. That being said, we kind of made a choice along with the Europäische Akademie Berlin to embark on this project where we think about how we want things to be, not just how we're mad about how they are. So we've gone through topic by topic, examining different ways we can imagine better spaces to share, not just for Berlin, but for cities in general, and inviting experts from all over the world to talk to us about that. Tonight, as I said, we're talking about private profits in public spaces, and that can mean a wide range of things. So much of the design of our city is defined by buildings owned by large corporations or the billboards that they apply to those buildings. But sometimes it's also shared vehicles that are maybe useful or maybe just a hindrance. I don't know. We all have opinions on them. I did ride one here today, but also hate them. Sometimes it's food stands, or sometimes it's a Christmas market where private money enters the public spaces. Sometimes it's private sales like Flohmarkts or drug dealers. It's all a part of what we do here. It even includes our toilets, which listeners will know in the last episode we talked about those being privately maintained. So perhaps we'll do more of that today. Joining me also today is a founding member of the Radio Spaetkauf team, Joel Delroy.
Hi, I'm Joel Delroy, and together with Dan, we've been doing Radio Spaetkauf for many years. I've been very, very impressed by this spin-off that we've been doing together with the Europäische Akademie Berlin, getting to discuss these issues. And this one I find particularly interesting because for me, Berlin is a city that goes through cycles of permissiveness and then what seems to me to be overcorrective regulation. And for many of us, some of the most interesting aspects of Berlin are those things that maybe were not permitted at the start, or they were created in a temporary vacuum of authority, moments when people seized the opportunity to fill a void with activity. And those are often in public spaces and sometimes for profit. And sometimes those experiments stick and they've become part of the culture of the city, and other times they're stamped out or moved or replaced by something else, something more formal, maybe something less interesting. So how much commercial activity can and should Berlin allow in our public spaces? And are our parks and streets and walls places where people should be allowed to carry out for-profit activity? These are the issues that I'm really interested to tease out with our fantastic panel of guests here tonight.
Radio Spaetkauf. Berlin news in English.
We're going to start with our guest. She is the chairperson of das Buschfunkbundes e.V. That's an organization fighting on behalf of Berliners for free access to public toilets. Please join me, everyone, in welcoming to the stage Sophie Menzel.
Thank you, Dan.
On your website, there was a great quote. I'll read it in German and then translate it. Lasst uns eine Beschwerdekultur in Hinblick auf die Toilette schaffen, or let's create a complaint culture regarding the toilet. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So yes, one of our slogan is to create a complaint culture, because if you complain to something, you have to talk about this. And if you talk about something, the best thing what can happen is to have a discussion. And if you have discussion, you can reveal some unfair situations. Let's take the example in front of the women toilets. We have a huge queue and we have to wait at least like 10 to 15 minutes. And next to us, there are the men's toilets with no queue. And yeah, that's normal. And why, it's like this because the men, they have the urinals, they have the toilets, they have more opportunities to go to the toilet. And yeah, the toilets are just an uncommon topic to talk about this. And we want the people to talk about it,
right,
to complain, and and to reveal these situations.
Do you find it? Oh, go ahead, spontaneous clapping. Of course. Is it hard to get people to talk about toilets?
Oh, at the beginning, they're like a little bit picky, but when you start, they never end.
Fantastic. I'd like to introduce another voice to our panel. Tamara Lüdke represents Lichtenberg at Berlin's Abgeordnetenhaus. She's a member of the SPD and is the party's spokeswoman on the topics of animal welfare, consumer protection, club culture, drug policy, and development policy. Please welcome to the stage Tamara Lüdke.
Thank you.
I mean, under the topic of where would say the sale of drugs in the city of Berlin, which is something we do, is a sale that usually takes place in public spaces. Does that fall under consumer protection, or where would you see that?
You see, it's a solo topic it stands for itself, but it also has a lot to do with, of course, club culture and development sometimes,
right?
Because we are not only talking about illegal drugs, we are also talking about tobacco or alcohol. So it also has a lot to do with consumer protection, of course,
right,
too.
And so when it comes to how we operate our parks, is that something that we should be taking into account?
I do think so.
Yeah. Excellent. We'll get more into that later. You clap for the last guest, guys. Next up, someone who's actually been on, long-time listeners, I think pre-pandemic. We can't even figure out how long ago it was. But he's a member of a board member of RSxEAB and a former editor of Bauwelt, der Wirtschaftswoche, den Deutschen Architektenblatt, and I have to bring up this magazine, Stern, just so well named. He's also a member of the Deutschen Akademie für Stadtbau and Landesplanung. He began his work on transport policy back in 1978 as part of the Berlin Citizens Initiative Westangente. Please welcome to the stage, Roland Stempel.
I just want to make it clear that Roland represents pedestrians. That's the main point that he'll talking to us about.
Right. What is RSxEAB?
Yeah, FUS is the lobby for pedestrians. There are automobile clubs, there are cyclists clubs, but the pedestrians are the biggest group in transportation in Berlin. We have still the smallest lobby. We get bigger. We double our membership about every 2 years for the basic means, which we do not only consider as a means of transportation, but as a social activity where you meet other people, where you see more and learn more about your city, of course, where you do good things for your health as well as for your environment. So walking is just great for people who do, and for all other people too, for business too, of course.
Okay.
Best way to get in shops.
Very good. I had a question come in from a listener who saw that we would be talking about this. Pretty Wholesome wanted to know if we should have public floggings as a solution for people who leave e-bikes and e-scooters in the way of walking. What do you think?
Well, public flogging is a bit too much.
Okay.
But we should care for that these kinds of devices are not parked in the way anyway, that there are only fixed spaces where you have to drop them, where you have to check out. They have to be on parking spaces, and then you get rid of the problem. That works in some parts of the center of Berlin works quite good, but that's only 1% of the city space, and we need it for 100%.
100%, but why not? I'm going to introduce one final guest to the stage before we continue the conversation. She is the Anti-Discrimination Commissioner with the Berlin Green Party, as well as a spokesman for the Green Party, Mitte's working group on anti-racism and diversity. Since 2021, she's been representing Gesundbrunnen at Berlin's Abgeordnetenhaus. Please welcome to the stage, Tuba Butzkot.
Hello, thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining us. It's one thing that's very nice. I find a lot of times on this show, due to the nature of the host, that we're really focused on Kreuzberg and Neukölln and maybe just parts of Friedrichshain and Mitte. And so it's really nice to have people joining us from beyond our typically very narrow consideration of what Berlin is. Well, if you count the airport, we spend a lot of time talking about that as well, which is further away. My question for you to open this up is, when it comes to diversity, when it comes to anti-racism and inclusion, does the free market, does capitalism, do private businesses help or hurt us to create spaces that are shared by everyone and where people meet each other?
Oh, that's a huge question. I mean, I'm critical per se, just because I'm working on anti-discrimination for so long, but I see spaces where it could work, especially as because the demands from the consumers did change in the last years. Since the people who are consuming or who are using and buying these products that are being sold or using the spaces that are being created from commercial businesses are demanding them to be more diverse or non-discriminatory, the products or the services do change, and I think that helps. That's why I'm a bit optimistic, but recent political changes or waves turning us towards more right-wing policies do or show a downside too. Yeah.
Guys, a round of applause for all the guests joining us today. I'd like to start off with maybe a question. We'll see where we need to jump in on this. But when it comes to what we were just discussing about creating inclusive spaces, I think that touches on what we were all talking about, each from a different angle. And does anyone in the panel have an example of where they see the privatization of public spaces helping to make the city better for groups of people who otherwise would not have the services they need? One thing we teased at the beginning was the wall brand toilets. Sophie, is that working?
Well, it's good to have toilets in the city. Let's start with that.
Okay.
And yes, and Wall put them because as a private enterprise, as a private company. But still, what we are complaining about is that they take fees for the toilets. And in my opinion, or we are thinking that public service must be free for everybody. Otherwise, you have you have the situation that like people who have money can go outside, have the mobility, and people without money, they have to stay at home. Mm-hmm. And that's not for what private space is to use, to be.
Right. Is there a way to make those, I assume, why are they fees in the first place? Or is that to cover the cost of toilet paper?
No, it's just for vandalism. In the end, then earn nothing with this 50 cents. It's just a drop on the hot stone. We say it in Germany, I don't know. If that exists in
drop
English.
on a hot stone?
A drop on a hot stone.
So it
exactly.
evaporates? Is that the idea? What a beautiful and scientific idiom.
But in the end, it's just for vandalism and to avoid vandalism and to let all the people inside who needs it actually.
Right.
Yeah.
And are there people in particular that are underserved by public toilets? I mean, we know everyone pees or poops.
Exactly.
I'm trying to get open as you are to this. So,
Thanks.
Like, there's many times where there's much more access, as you said, to urinals, and people point out that this is penis-centric, I guess. Are there urinals for women? Are there other solutions?
There is a solution for women, exactly, the alternative urinals. In Berlin, there are already 13 and as well 12 unisex urinals. So they're existing. But it's just the thing of money and acceptance. And for that, I want to start again with the complaint cultures. So please, every woman, complain about the situation, do something, talk about this. It's just a question of the will of the politics.
And is it hard to get? Well, we'll ask the politicians about the will of that, I guess. Is toilets is it on the agenda? Does it come up?
I actually wanted to second that, because whenever we're talking about that in the parliament, mainly the guys laugh about it. It's true, as you said. It's not just not accepted. It seems as if it's a non-topic, because it just concerns women, just in quotes. So it's not actually necessity, and we were not talking about it. We were not complaining about it. The public was not complaining about it since. And that shows us that it's not an issue. But it is an issue, of course it is. So whenever, we talk about it, or our colleagues, we have a colleague in the left party, she's very vocal about it, and she makes, I think she's having fun talking about the topic too, which is good. It's really important that we talk about these issues that concern not just women or, people that are not having penises.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
I know. It's okay. So we need to talk about it more, and we have to go through them making fun of it.
Right.
And since there are 13 now, you said, it's a start.
Right.
We should have
it's
more.
not quite enough for all of the bladders in the city at once, or even one at a time, I should say. To me, one thing is like when I look around where people do pee. So sometimes it's in a bush or it is in a place. I also look at where people are getting their drinks, which is not always lining up with where they're allowed to pee. Like we have fond for bottles, but you can go to 90% of probably the urine in this city comes from beer sold at Spaetkauf who don't offer toilet services. Or in our parks where do we always pair toilets? Is there a way that we can make toilets a part of selling drinks or something like that? The other place people go where I'm from to pee is Starbucks. And I feel like they know, okay, this will be reasonably clean or whatever. But public toilets that don't exist inside cafes have a terrible reputation. And is the city capable of creating something maybe nice enough to use? Yes, Roland.
Well, there is a good idea which is practiced, as far as I know, not in Berlin. It's in Germany. It's die nette Toilette, the nice toilet. It works the way that you don't build a toilet somewhere which may cost 20 or 50,000 euros, but you give 100 euros or so to pub and coffee owners, and they allow people, whoever who need a toilet, to go in without the need to buy a drink or so.
Right.
It's much cheaper. It gives some extra money to small enterprises, to small coffee and pub owners, and helps the people. And these toilets exist. Thousands of them exist all over the city, and in particular in places where many drinks are taken. So this will help a lot to establish a system like that.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, and we are already thinking about implementing a concept like nette Toilette. So I'm a little bit more optimistic, because in terms of complaint culture, I think you already have been quite successful. We are talking about it in Parliament at least. So I also do think, like Tuba, that it is not enough, and sometimes, especially men, laugh a little bit about that still, but they started to notice the issue, and I think we have to keep pushing.
Maybe we'll move on to we'll come back to the potty talk, because I think there's a lot more to uncover there. Roland, what's the biggest issue facing pedestrians?
It's a very simple issue. Pedestrians want to get along, safe, with enough space, with nothing in the way. So that's very simple. And And that causes, but there are problems on sidewalks as well as when you cross driveways. And so our main issue is to get and to keep the sidewalks free and the ways over the driveways, to keep them safe and without long times of waiting and without danger, so that everybody can walk through the city free and without worries about the safety.
Berlin, yeah, sorry, Joel.
So this is an issue where we see public and private colliding because, of course, in the last years we've had this boom of services, companies offering services on the streets, scooters, bicycles, cars for renting. And I've been away from Berlin for about the last 9 months. And I remember when I left, there was discussions about creating zones where perhaps these shared devices had to be kept or had to be parked. What's happened since? What do Berlin's streets look like now in 2024?
Well, when you go to some central areas, say to Unter den Linden or Friedrichstraße, it looks much better. You find these areas with a distance of about 200 meters, and you can park your device there, but you can't park it around there. And so there the chaos has gone, but as I said, this is only a little part of the city, and the public fund of it has just been blocked by two-thirds. Berlin has run out of money, and we say you don't need any public funds. It's a private business, it's the sharing business. They use public space for their business, and so they should pay for this fixed stations where their devices have to be parked.
And before we get the reaction from our politicians in the room, are there other cities where you see this being done in a way that you think is better?
The solution of Paris is not bad. They have abandoned them completely, but
well, that's not entirely true. In Paris, I was just there. I actually stopped in to watch some of the Olympic Games, and I used a shared bike, and I could only park it in a specific spot. And in fact, I couldn't even I couldn't close it without being in that exact zone. Is that something that you would like to see implemented in Berlin?
Yeah. So as it is done when you go to Brandenburg Gate or when you go to Unter den Linden and see the side roads, you find huge bunches. You find 50 e-scooters on one place, but some maybe a little bit around that place, but not everywhere as they used to be.
Right. But that is something where it's administrated differently, borough to borough. Is that part of the issue, that maybe Mitte has implemented rules that are not being implemented in other boroughs?
I'm actually not aware of that. I know the only difference that there is that it's only concerning e-scooters. It's not concerning bikes. Because I often use shared mobility, actually, and not just bikes and e-scooters. I sometimes even take cars as a green, I know. But still, I would, I'm of course on Roland's sides, and I do see that we have a lot of problems with this sharing mobility options. But the biggest issue we have is traffic caused by cars in the city. We have too many cars, and they're blocking a lot of space that we could use for pedestrians and also for the sharing options. Because my main goal would be to have less cars, but more, shared mobility options for people. Because the advantage, or as someone who's using that, having your app and looking out for a bike, for an e-scooter, or even a car, and seeing that one is close to you, taking it and leaving it wherever you want is huge. It's amazing. But if it would have more free space and not everything would be blocked by cars. Or actually, you can park at parking spots for cars. You can park your bikes too. Right. That's allowed. That's possible, and that was always allowed. It was not just allowed under Green's administration, but before and after that too. But people are not used to do that, and because we are so, it is so normalized for us. Those cars are taking all the space, and it's so natural to us. Even for people who are not using cars at all, it's so natural. It's like second nature to have cars everywhere. But it's not normal, and it shouldn't be normalized even further. It should be more normalized to have, quieter streets with less cars or just no cars, and having more space for pedestrians, and also
so
for
it's not just
stores.
It's not about just closing the streets, but also using those parking spaces, which should be for everyone. But I also think that some of these issues maybe apply in different parts of the city. Tamara, what do you see as like the government's role or your take on how we could better. Should we go back to the cafes and the parking spaces? Like, what do we want to do with that space besides leave them for cars that are not doing much?
I also do think that it should be given kind of back to public. And I'm also in favor of shared mobility, of course, but I think you do need to take a closer look on that. Personally, I would love to have a ban on e-scooters because, I'm freaking out about them too. I hate to have them everywhere. And we didn't get a solution on how to make a contract with the businesses giving them out. So like Roland said, in the contract where you just can give them back in a distinct place. So
right.
They are not everywhere. I just remember, I'm not into that topic in specifics, to be honest, but I think there's kind of a law missing for us to force them to do that. And that's the difference to Paris, honestly. And we have not been able to make that law work yet. That's the problem. And maybe with the Greens, it was more easy to get the political will to find that law and make it work. But I think with the CDU together, it's much more complicated to actually have the political will to have this. We had the coalition. We you
can't say that off mic, too. That's not fair.
We did have
Sorry,
the coalition.
The mic. You broke the coalition.
Yeah, well, we kind of both did. And
just for a long time, we've never had more than one party represented on a single episode before. So our contacts at EAB really brought the fire and the hot takes today. I appreciate that.
So we are still trying to move forward with that topic and find that law and make it work. But I think I remember that the district Mitte came up with a solution. How did that work out?
Since I'm from Mitte, Weddingen Gesundbrunn belongs to Mitte. It's kind of difficult to switch between German and English. Gesundbrunnen, I want to say.
No. Actually, that's just us mispronouncing it. You should say it off Deutsch. It's just fine. Yeah.
Fine. So we have this areas where I have to bring back the e-scooters too. Mm-hmm. But I mean, at Gesundbrunn, you see it all the time. You have e-scooters in the Panke. So it doesn't really work.
Right.
That's not the place where you should put them.
But this makes me ask the question, is fundamentally the issue here that we're trying to interface private business and then government regulating it, as opposed to many of the other things like the streets and the parking lots and the parking spaces are maintained by the city and that service. So we're providing services for that, but not we're building the bridges. We're interfacing with the BVG in a very different way than we are with these companies. So couldn't we just say, all right, no more private e-scooters, no more private shared bikes and vehicles, and make that part of our actual public infrastructure? And not have to worry about how we regulate someone else or have the laws to do it, but just do it right.
But you mean like buying them as a city to own these e-scooters?
I would say enteigning them, but if you want to buy them, sure.
I think like when you let the BVG, for example, give to the BVG their own e-scooter section, like something like that.
It's your senator.
The e-scooter senator.
Like the one who's responsible for the BVG.
BVG. She is kind of BVG responsible, Franziska Giffey. But actually, the money for the BVG mostly comes in about the Verkehr, the traffic sector. So we have to find a solution together again with the CDU. It's a nice idea, but as always, it's about, as I said, money in a certain way. For the BVG to make something like that work, maybe the ticket prices would have to get up. It depends on the pricing in the end, I think.
Right.
So you would have to take a compromise maybe between having more shared solutions run by the BVG and a social ticket pricing.
Right. Well, I think the BVG is an interesting example where the spaces are not, we let people get on or off without a turnstile, which is very different from a lot of cities. And then we have enforcement, which pays for itself through those fines. It's roughly the budget for the enforcers lines up to much the budget with the fines. So when Roland speaks about, having the right laws, it still leaves those somehow to be enforced, right? And does the pay-foul-gaze solution to this, is there some sort of, not that I want to lead to more, especially with recent news, like militarization of enforcement or letting random security guards enforce our cities, but is there a way to make it easier for people to participate in the process of keeping the streets clean? Yeah, Roland?
Well, I think it's not that important whether offered devices, sharing devices are public or private. It's most important how people behave, how the users behave with it. And that they don't care whether it's tier or whether it's BUG. They care whether the rules are okay, whether it's not dangerous, and whether they are fined for bad behavior. And so fines for bad behavior have to be risen, and and safety has to be improved, of course. Lower car speed on roads so that they can that it's easier and a nicer feeling to go there instead of using sidewalks. And why not on sidewalks what they have in Paris, where we park your car on a sidewalk where you're not allowed to do it, or where you drive with a bike or with an e-scooter on a sidewalk. The fine is great. I love it. It's 135 euros. That's the way we should go in Berlin.
135.
We would, yeah.
But who pays
we
the
would
fine?
regain the important public space of sidewalks for the people who need it and who need the safety and quietness and relaxation, feeling of relaxation there.
Who pays the fine for an e-scooter abandoned incorrectly? The driver?
No,
or the
it's not for
company?
abandoning an e-scooter. It's for driving.
Oh, driving it on the sidewalk.
For using a sidewalk with a driving device.
Okay.
No matter whether car, e-scooter, or bicycle or whatever. And French people are a bit more anarchists than Germans, even than Berliners. Their relationship to state and orders is a bit not as closed as it's with many Germans, but it works. So you can on the French boulevards you can walk. They are free, but it's not a real limitation in mobility for people who drive. They just drive elsewhere.
Yeah, I wonder though if Paris is always the best example for Berlin. That's a great solution. Find people who have, done the wrong thing, and it does require then more enforcement. But from city to city, we have very different geographies, widths of streets, even within. I mean, maybe someone speak to this within the city itself. These last mile type of transit. By neighborhood, your needs are very different, and it fills a role that public transportation isn't. And in other parts of the city, we have very, very wide sidewalks or streets, depending on. Tamara, is this also maybe part of DDR versus Western streets, or because I noticed in some places we have more space.
In the old cities, we don't have that much space because the sidewalks are thinner, and we do have a little bit more space in some places of the later on built sites in Lichtenberg. But it's not only about east to west, I think, but it's also about inner and outer circle. Right now, those scooters are mostly used in the inner city center, where you already have a lot of train stations, a good bus transportation, and a good takt for the U-Bahn. And when you go into the other spaces where you would actually need them for the last mile, there are none.
Right.
So if we are talking about regulation on e-scooters, I think we should also check about how to bring them on the outer skirts of Berlin.
I changed topic.
Yes.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about e-scooters, which is an area where we've seen companies that have come in and used public space, and then now we've tried to figure out what to do with that because we haven't liked the outcome. But there are other examples too where things have been tried in public spaces that get shut down very quickly that maybe people actually like, and that I'm interested to know, particularly as lawmakers, you come at everything from a perspective of how to regulate, how to create laws. That's your instrument. Are there sometimes things, though, that we should permit without regulating them to see how they grow and whether people like them or not? And I'm thinking of things like sidewalk commerce, where people are selling things on the street. And there have been times where, some of the most interesting things about Berlin have been sort of created by people just doing things without permission. And then later they get shut down, or they get somehow regulated or moved to another space. A prime example is Thai Park. Of course, Thai Park, was an extremely popular place for people to go and eat on a Sunday, and then it's gone through various phases now of being regulated. Now its current status is it's been moved to a market where it's sort of in it's a fairly different feel of an event, and it doesn't have quite that same community feeling that it had at the start. Another example I'm thinking of is one of the favorite things I used to love here was the 1st of May when you walked around Kreuzberg. Families would sit out on the sidewalks with their little food stands, and they would sell their koftas, and you could just buy food from some grandma who's selling their food. That all got quite shut down in the last few years. So my question is, do we sometimes go too far or too quickly to regulate things? Do you as lawmakers see a space for allowing people to try things in public space to see whether they're popular, whether they work, before we come in and regulate them?
Absolutely. I think the pop art or the pop-up culture is moving to Berlin already, but we have been seeing that in malls and spaces like that, where we have moving businesses and coming around with new things, for example, at Zoo. And I think we want to explore more of that in spaces we don't need in a way they were functioning anymore, because malls are not functioning like they did a century ago. For the more public spaces, I think, like you had, for example, the Thai market, there is an over-regulation on the one hand side, but this is an example where complainant culture didn't work out successfully, actually, because we have usually a lot of noise complaints, a lot of complaints about trash on the streets and all of that. So on the one hand, sometimes it leaves me confused, to be honest, because people want those things, but they don't want to stick to the rules which are already there to keep the community together. So you can do those things, but you also have to be responsible with what you have, or we can't do it anymore. You can't have nice things if you're not responsible for your surrounding, and that's kind of the problem. This is where politics tend to get over-regulated, because we get the complaints and we are like, oh no, okay, well then we can't do it anymore.
Right. But I think oftentimes what anyone who's interacted with Berlin bureaucracy knows is that, yeah, you can't do it unless you can, because someone just says you can. And the laws are the laws and the rules are the rules, but when enforcement is only complaint-based, then, it doesn't necessarily encourage the most vibrant city possible. The space we're in can't stay here. It can't stay here. It's beautiful. We love it. But I know people right next door with kids who are like only not complaining because they're my friends. No, I'm joking. We keep everything under a certain decibel here, and we don't do anything weird and illegal. But for people who are coming to the city and have to figure out how to make a space, and they can no longer just set up Tacheles, because Tacheles is some sort of museum of money now. You've got to then find building after building of empty commercial spaces and get access to it, pay rent, don't pay rent, find a space that's empty, figure out if you have the right number of toilets, figure out if you have the right... There's just a lot you have to do. And it's not possible for the average person. Yes, Roland.
There is an interesting example of practicing business on roads, on sidewalks, with no hassle for other people. I don't know whether they still exist around Alexanderplatz. They were so-called grill walkers.
Right.
There were sausage sellers, but they carried it around. They had their little oven and they had their sausages.
Right.
And the condition under which they could do it everywhere was you can sell and you can do what you can carry around. And I think that's a good rule to allow all people who can carry their things, because they don't block public space. If you would say you can take your little table or your shop or whatever you have around you, people block everything. And there you need regulation, and there you need a bit of bureaucracy.
Right.
But just with basically allowing to everything, what you can carry, you can sell. I think this would bring more life to cities and would allow people to open small business with little capital.
It's an interesting theory. I think many of the reasons those don't exist anymore is they were commissioned salesperson who ended up making less than minimum wage, and then the business model didn't work out anymore once they were forced to treat them as actual employees. I could be wrong, but that's my memory. Same thing for probably half the services we use in the city now anyway. We just have Volt to bring us sausages to wherever we are instead of walking up to the grill man. Yes.
Yeah, I actually wanted to add a little more Green's perspective on it. I think the MyFest is the reason it's not happening anymore. That's why there is no celebration and people selling Goslam on the streets, for example, which I actually love too. With the Thai park, the issue was that it is a park, so there are different regulations. If it would be a square, it would be different. It could be maybe treated differently. I don't think that the solution now is really nice, and it's true that the feeling is a different one, but it was the most sensible, because you have to, as a lawmaker or even as a decision maker, you always have to, weigh the different interests in, and you have to think about what is the bigger good. And the bigger good was to have a clean park, or to restore or retain this green area that we don't have much of in the city anyway. So that was the reasoning. But regarding sales on the street, I'm a member of parliament from Gesundbrunn. I live in Wedding, and you have a lot of these little cafes, the cafes are not known in the city. No one comes to Berlin and thinks about, let's go to this cafe XY in Wedding, because it's not as popular as something in Mitte or Kreuzberg even. And so they ask whether they can, it was during Corona or during the COVID pandemic, it was possible to have sales on the street because you couldn't enter. And they still ask whether it could be possible. And we discuss it, and it's a public space and it's a commercial business. No, it shouldn't be allowed. But I sometimes think when it's small businesses and it adds to the cultural variety of this specific area, it should be an option. We should consider it. And there we shouldn't be as strict as lawmakers as we used to. So yeah, that's the area I see. I'm not talking about Starbucks. I'm talking really. Am I allowed to name them? Yeah, I hope. Yeah. Okay.
It's a thing that exists in the world. Yeah.
I don't know. So anyway, but I'm talking about small cafes, really.
I remember that during one of the moments I thought was, the most interesting in recent years in Berlin was the coronavirus pandemic, when suddenly everything was up in the air, nobody knew what was happening, and all the rules got changed. And one of those rules that temporarily was changed was what you just talked about. Shops were given permission to use the sidewalks or use the car parking spaces, and cafes could create extra outdoor space where we could, distance ourselves and safely. And then that was taken away. And I wonder, like, from a lawmaker's perspective, why couldn't we keep the thing that was good, the one good thing that happened during the pandemic?
It's public area. It's actually simple. It's public area. It's a common good, and it's commercial business that is doing business on public space. That's the basic explanation for it. But I still think that we should have flexibility on it.
I think there's not a point why it was taken back, because the cars came back. Everyone was moving into home office, and they didn't drive, and they didn't need those parking slots. And now they're back in their cars, and now they want their parking slots back. That's also kind of an explanation. It's public space, and you always have to keep in mind, not everyone has the money to use businesses, and not everyone has the money to go for a Coke and work on their MacBook from a cafe in hip Berlin Mitte. I think it's a nice thing, especially also for tourists. But we have families with lower incomes, and they need spaces which don't afford to pay for anything in the public. So if we are taking away parking slots to sit there, I think they should be only given away if the access is granted for free and not if you only buy a thing.
Our recent experiments with that included Friedrichstrasse, which I feel like could have worked if it hadn't been totally undermined. But within that area right now, we recently talked to the library, which is running out of space, which provides that have a coffee in a cafe experience without taking money from people, and which provides a lot of things for children, for everyone who wants to go there. Even tourists are a part of library culture in many cities. So they're looking at the Galleria Lafayette. Yes.
Can I take again the idea of having different kind of companies in the city? For example, for toilets. Again, it will be great to have different kind of toilets in the city, like different kind of constructions, or as well the design to have a greater landscape in the city, and as well like. Yeah, why not making peeing fun again? Not again. It wasn't.
Well, peeing. I don't know.
No.
I have little boys at home. It's fun for some people.
Just it's releasing.
Yeah.
But to let more innovations in the city, for example, from toilets.
What's an innovative toilet that you've seen?
Like the different construction of urinals.
Okay.
Like on the floor or on the wall, there are already different kind of. So, and I'm sure there are more. So yeah, let's take it as they are already existing like a pilot project now for 1 year with Eco-Toilette and Finizio and Messoir. But I know much more other toilets in this kind. For example, there are toilets for children, for playgrounds.
Oh, right. Playgrounds would be that would be a great place for, I guess, a toilet. A toilet that somehow was used for children and families and not for like intravenous drug use. Do the children's toilets discourage that somehow?
No, it's just a model. It's not already built.
Oh, okay.
I just saw it, and it's like a bowl, and on the bowl a lot of flowers and stuff, and it's easy and stuff like that, and it's easy for the children to go inside, and it's like So there exists a lot of designs. We just need the opportunity to let it out, to let it in the public.
And who's producing these innovative? That is like, not to sound all American, but sometimes the private sector or there's a city full of, cool designers just waiting for work. I mean, where are these toilets? Who's coming up with them?
Oh, most of them are students or in the university, but there as well professors who already designed urinals and different kind of toilets. But it's mostly in context of university.
Right. But is it still $50,000 per toilet?
Yeah, it's still a toilet, and it's still as well thinking about what to do with the pee and the poo, to use it as fertilizer, for example.
Oh.
That exists already, like Finizio doing it in Eberswalde, and all the forms and designs for toilets I saw already are thinking about how to use it afterwards.
Okay. Tomorrow.
I actually do love those toilets from Eberswalde, and bringing back the poo to the circle. It's a kind of circular economy, and it is. It is circular.
That's what Tina Turner was doing in Thunderdome.
Yeah, it's kind of, and it's also what at the Ärzte concert was going on there, because they did it all complete in circular economics in Tempelhofer Feld last weekend, I think, and this is why this concert was so special, because everything there was reusable and recycled and going back in the full cycle, like everything, also the toilets. And that's great. And this is a thing we really need to empower a lot more.
How do we do that?
Money.
It's all about money.
Well, that just gives you an excuse, doesn't it? Yeah.
I actually wanted to talk about the Friedrichstrasse, but I forgot what the question was you were leading into.
Libraries.
But what was the question with the library anyway?
The question is about turning over spaces to other uses that don't cost money, because as we say, like, okay, as we were saying, we take these cafes and then do we have to pay to use them, or are we building spaces that are open? And now we have, for me, that this is this giant space that thousands of people might want to visit as part of the library service, maybe even as tourists. Does it make, but it's one of those things that seems like a no-brainer, but we're not doing it. So is it a brainer?
It is a brainer because it comes again down to money. Because it's, the building the Galerie Lafayette was in is pretty expensive to rent. And now we are having talks, I mean, the Senate is having talks whether the library could go in and whether they can pay this amount of money the investor is asking. And mind you, they have, while the Galerie Lafayette was in talks with Tishman Speyer, who were the investors of this building, while they were in negotiations, the Senate pushed the idea of the library, pushing the price up, which was so not sensible at all.
All right.
So
we did the same thing with the airport.
Yes, the price is so high up that they can't actually push the idea further, because where's the money? We have a huge deficit of billions right now in the household. So the money is not there. But still, when talking about Friedrichstraße was a thing that cost, I think, us, our coalition, was we had this.
I do think so too.
Yeah, well, we had this pilot, whether it was a closed down area, I think of 600 meters or something like that. That was closed for cars. Not for pedestrians, not for bikes, not for anything. So it was a huge fight because the people in the stores along organized, and they pushed the idea that people who were coming with cars would go actually shopping, which is not the case.
Right.
People in cars don't stand there, park there, and go shopping on the Friedrichstraße. They go through the Friedrichstraße and go somewhere else shopping, maybe online. So, and yes, and the issue is, and you were talking about the people coming back to work and cars coming back to the streets. That's not the case in Friedrichstraße. In Friedrichstraße, you have a lot of stores that are empty.
Right.
You have a lot of office space that is empty and that is not used for things like you are doing, and many other creative people in the city are doing too. There is not enough space. And then you have costs like, I think, 50, 60, 70 euros per square meter for an office to rent in the Friedrichstraße, where, it's cheaper for them to keep them empty than to give it out cheaper. So the investors are the problem. And there is political, you have leverage to push them. But we're not using it right now. The government right now is not using it on the federal level. We have also issues with another yellow party that are not using the leverage that they would have. So yeah, that's the issue there. And we should use the space. And I love the idea with the library. But again, if you have a library, they're thinking about 10,000 people every day coming to this library. That means there can't be cars anymore, because where are the 10,000 people going and walking around? So again, it should be more, better for pedestrians to walk around there. And you have to have spaces for bikes too. So you will have different talks. And they're now pretending they have this huge, amazing idea. They could do it, and they could follow through money-wise, which they can, fund-wise, which they can't, and then they would have to change the transport there.
And but I have to add, it's just a senator who thinks the money is there. He's kind of like, there's always money in a banana stand, but there isn't.
Right. But again, the money that we're talking about is to pay investors and real estate developers. It's not. That's not of something that I'm super, super stressed about, because they're not benefiting the city at all, and they're taking advantage of us. And when they leave, when they are gaining income just by owning a property and doing nothing with it, is that ethical or moral at all? That we have space after space that could be housing people, that could be, to say like it costs 50,000 euro to build a toilet, or even to give 100 euro to have a netta toilette, when the toilets are literally already there in an empty building on the street level, and all we have to do is unlock it or throw a brick through the glass. Or just whatever would work to do it. It seems weird that we have a lack of money when we have all the money we need to have functioning toilets or have a library space, if we don't worry about or we punish people, or we take away their tax incentives if they leave things fallow. I mean, that's something that some cities do.
The thing is, yes, we have to incentivize businesses to flourish in Berlin because, Berlin is different from other states, like Germany is a federal country, and within, or in comparison to other states within Germany, Berlin is in a good position economy-wise. So yeah, and we should, push that the economy is flourishing here. I get that, but still, on the other hand, we have to put pressure on the economy when, in certain areas, not everywhere, not to burden them with more and more tasks. I get that, but as far as transformation, having this. We call it sozial-ökologische Transformation, having this eco-social transformation going further. We have to put some pressure at certain points, and also, when it comes to having or giving access to public creativity, but also public space to make it useful. Who does it help, or for whom is it a nice area? We have to get off the train there. I'm always at the Kochstraße, Checkpoint Charlie, every day. And it's like, it's only tourists, and otherwise it's dead. There's nothing going on. Who can say that it's a nice area to have? No one can say that. No one can say that our vision in 10 years would be that it's still this way. There's just concrete and just people looking at Checkpoint Charlie, which is not the actual Checkpoint Charlie anyway, but still taking pictures with I don't know what. So yeah, we have to talk about, pushing some or putting some pressure on the companies or the investors in the area, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. And we have to push more forward to socio-economical standards, and I think we should cooperate on privates in some levels, because you were talking about how there are, of course, bad ones, and sure there always are, and it's sometimes really hard to get to them because we don't have Enteignung yet.
Sure.
And and we also do need their money. Well, the money is on their side. So I think we should at least try to make it attractive also for them to get the buildings in a different way. So there is not only concrete there anymore. How to get more greens on the buildings, for example. How to get more solar panels on the, for example. So I think we have to sort the bad ones out, but that's kind of the job of Staatsanwaltschaft, and we need more Staatsanwaltschaft to do some of those things, but also need to cooperate and empower more of the good ones, and make a way to tell them, hey, come to Berlin if you want to make an important impact on a greener future and a greener and social future.
That's a lovely statement, but something that Tuva said is very interesting, which is that Berlin has money, which was not the case a short time ago, right? We were poor but sexy. So now if you're telling me we're middle class, but we're losing some of the sexy. And a lot of what I think cultural capital has been a huge part of the change of the city. Like, people didn't come here for industry, and they're not staying here for industry. So if the money is here, it has to do with other things. So is there any amount of money, if we're going to maintain that cultural capital, is there anything better for the city to invest in than making sure that the space stays walkable and livable and enjoyable and peeable?
What we lack is the vision. Because yes, we do have money, but now they're having talks within the Senate that, they have a huge deficit. How could that be possible if we have the money, if we're, looking better than other states in Germany? Because, the answer is simple. It's because we're giving out money without any clear vision, without a coherent vision. We have budgets in different spaces. We have an educational budget, we have an economic budget, we have a cultural budget, but we don't think it through or make sure that they are in a coherent, there is a coherent strategy. Because as you said it, when industries are here in Berlin, they're here because it's attractive to be in Berlin, because of the people, because of the culture. So we have to make sure that the people here can have good lives. We have to make sure that the infrastructure is good, that schools are good, that kitas, like kindergartens, are good. And there's so much more to it. Also, the healthcare system in Berlin is is not good. So that has to be improved too. So, we know where the money has to go into, but I don't think that the lawmakers decision makers, lawmakers I'm too, but the decision makers are having this clear vision that is so coherent and, entails all the areas of politics.
Yeah.
What the lawmakers are always arguing about is how to make it also social. And that's on a lot of terms the problem, because if we invest in something, how can we invest in a way that that things stay accessible to all the people? And a lot of things we invest on are turning gentrification back on, but this is what we need to stop. Right. So I think we don't have to find just a way to get a coherent strategy. We do need that, but we also need to get more regulation on the rents.
Yeah.
Just for our listeners later who are going to be hearing this, you've been speaking last was Tamara Lütke, who is a representative of the SPD, and before that, Tuba Botskurt from the Green Party. So those are the two voices that you've just been hearing. Roland from the FUS e.V., did you have an input on this topic?
Yeah, talking about money for improving public space. You can spend a lot of money to improve public space. You can pave the whole city with marble or gold, if you like that. Well, it's another question whether it's real improvement or not. But you don't need to. It's rather a question of good regulation. If you say the roads as they are, they have sidewalks on their sides. Often enough, they're even wide enough. They have driveways in the center, and they have the space which is used for parking. You don't have to rebuild the roads, but you just have to reuse the parking space for other things, to plant, to put coffees on there, and to use them as, we call it multi-use strips, for all different kind of purposes. We have new purposes and needs for playing, for sitting. We're talking about loading infrastructure for electric cars, but much more important, there is loading infrastructure for old people who can walk 300 or 500 meters with, and then they have to relax. And when you offer them a place to sit, their mobility goes up. They can walk to the next, to their doctor or to their best friend, even if it's a kilometer, if they can have to, and what you're talking about, deloading infrastructure is as important as that. Yeah. So don't let's talk about electrical cars, but let's talk about cheap things which can be done on that part of the road.
Right outside of this building here is wasted, essentially space. And I'm just in my group email from the neighborhood, someone was complaining about couches being placed there, mainly because of who they were seeing using it. But it's one of these things where someone has actively, and for literally no cost, made that space usable. And again, it's to do that from this, I guess it would be expensive for the city to do that because they can't just like throw couches and there's rules or whatever. But it seems like a lot of times people, when they're unregulated, find the solutions, and then the regulations lead to it costing money that it didn't before. So the city steps in and doesn't give us a better space, but they take away what we have.
This is sort of getting back to the thing that I was saying a bit earlier, where sometimes I think maybe we need less action and less regulation to allow ideas on the street level to try out. And another example I want to give that's currently active is the use of public space for the purpose of music, street music. At the moment, street musicians in Berlin are having a protest. Just 2 days ago, they had a protest because the Ordnungsamt, particularly in Kreuzberg-Friedrichshain, is rather aggressively cracking down on street musicians, and they're taking away their instruments, and they're fining them. And these musicians are calling for the Ordnungsamt to basically just back off a bit. Now, of course, that's a bit difficult because the Ordnungsamt's job is to follow the letter of the law, make sure the law is enforced 100%. So are there areas on the street level, and that's sort of a commercial activity in a way.
Right.
It's a musician playing, and they should be compensated because they're musicians. And do we, in some ways in Berlin, sometimes need to back off a little bit and allow these things to flourish, and then rather than create a law and crack down on them fully. How about we take the ladies first, and then we'll come back to Roland.
That's kind of a regulation problem too, maybe, because you can't control everything. We don't have the people to control everything and make sure that every law is a 100% at every time. So there's always a political decision on where to put your forces. So if we are talking about Ordnungsamt, so it's a political decision to go after the music, for example. And you can, in a district, make a decision to let them be a little more. That's possible right now. So,
and would you, as the SPD, would you think there should be a little bit more street music?
I think there should be a lot more street music. I think there should be also a lot more club culture in the parks. This is like a main issue we have right now, because open air raves are a big part of Berlin culture and what made the city aber sexy, for example. And they are pushed back because spaces are shrinking, because of new buildings, because everything is kind of shrinking. And so creative spaces are shrinking. And we need to keep them open and find ways to keep them open without everyone complaining about the noises too, for sure. But this is also a thing this city needs to talk about. So how quiet do you want everything to be? How much free and creativity space do you want to be part of and have in the city? And everyone needs to step a little bit back to have everything here, because Berlin's taking really a great fund of club culture, open air raves and creative spaces which are not commercialized, and this needs to happen and keep going so this city keeps getting trendsetting.
Radio Spaetkauf. Berlin news in English.
So before we heard from Tamara Lüdke in response to the issue about busking and street music. Tuba, do you want to respond from the perspective of from the Greens and from your personal perspective?
I mean, again, of course, we should have creative culture on the streets, and we should have raves in the parks. But on the other hand, I mean, yes, sure, we should have them, and it's good. And also, people playing instruments. I don't necessarily know what the reason is why they are not allowing it anymore. It could be because it's, again, in the parks. When it's parks, the regulations are stricter or different. And especially having raves in parks. We had the issue with during COVID, during the first year of the pandemic, they had raves, for example, in the Weinbergspark. Mm-hmm. And it was a huge mess afterwards. I do understood, especially then, because it was young people who were not allowed to go out at all. I understand this feeling. I mean, I was young once, so I feel them, or I felt them. But still, having a park looking like that afterwards means it costs the city or the district, again, to clean it up. And you can't do it only several amount of times. So you can't do it all the time because it's an issue of money. So, and parks, are areas that you have to retain, have to keep. We don't have a lot of green spaces in Berlin. Sometimes people do think that we have a lot of green spaces.
I do feel
here.
like we do compared to many places.
I know, compared to the US, maybe, but not compared to different cities in Germany. I don't want to talk it down. We have parks, that's true. But still, I mean, keeping it is essential, especially in the coming years when the city will heat up even more.
Right.
So we need these spaces.
Apropos of climate change and also the ability for people to pee and walk, one of the spaces that I find in the city where I when I first moved here and didn't know I couldn't get toilet paper for 4 days on Christmas, so I use it as a toilet, a space that in America a lot of times when it's hot or cold, old people use to walk and sit, are shopping malls. And it is something that maybe is not a business model that works as well anymore, but as a space that's publicly accessible and publicly usable, although technically private, and which could be more public if it was maintained by someone with that goal. And we even see now things like the former Potsdamer Platz Mall converting itself into a sort of general activity area type thing as a way to make money off of a space they've already invested in. But that's something that, again, it feels like private private money is driving forward using an indoor space in a new way. I mean, I don't know from the perspective of toilets or walking if shopping malls are something that you've considered or researched. Yes, Roland.
Well, the idea of the shopping center is, and what their owners wish is, that people stay there for a long time, and that they walk around and then get into the shops. So they are technically very, very good managers in walking. So when you think about better conditions for walking in public space, go to shopping centers. We talk to their architects and managers about the wideness of space, about the change in the equipment with seats and many other things. So we could learn a lot of them by them and use shopping centers for that purpose. Well, if you get the problem is that you don't have public influence and what happens inside, whom they let in, whom they let out, under which conditions they do, which percentage of their space how many people they let in, whether they don't allow certain people to get in at all. So it's a nice idea to use them more publicly. I would wish. It would be done, but under our law, it's quite difficult.
But perhaps we can utilize their expertise. I mean, Friedrichstrasse was heavily invested in consultants, but not very much in buildings, chairs.
No.
So perhaps we may are turning to the wrong resources. Again, in terms of finding the money, is there a way in terms of toilet access? Are there other things besides that we can't, where the lack of budget is not going to impede us from getting what we need?
For the shopping centers?
I'm saying, is there private solutions for toilets, or are there public solutions that aren't as expensive?
It depends. Like when you're going to let's take the shopping center again. I think about the Potsdamer Platz in this moment. Right. There is no toilet, and if I have to go to the Berliner Mall, no, so I have to find it, and I have to pay 50 cents to €1. And that's no other possibility, no? There's really no other possibility to go to use a toilet. And in a private thing like kiosk, perhaps I can ask, but they're small. The toilets are usually in the private rooms. It's not really common to use it. Mm-hmm. So in a public space, I think we depends on the public toilets. We're not depending on the toilets from restaurants or from malls or like that. Right. I think it's really the duty of the government to offer toilets in public space.
Is there a right to pee?
Just a funny side note: the street on the Potsdamer Platz, from the Potsdamer Platz to the theater, is a private street. So maybe we could, lobby. I mean, if the government is not really doing anything, maybe we could lobby there. It's really interesting. It's a private street, and it's one of the most clean streets in Berlin. It's really highly maintained, and the people are looking, for it to be clean. And now it's even closed for cars, so it's only pedestrians or bikes.
Will be a good place. Right? Do you want to ask you, Patty? Thanks.
Every single one of these episodes, we end up realizing we've got a whole season of things to cover. And so we will return to these issues in the future, but we do need to eat dinner now. So I want to give each of you a chance to let people know what you're working on. And if we didn't manage to cover a topic that was really important to you in this conversation of private money.
Maybe we start at the end. Tamara Lüdke from the SPD.
Well, we didn't talk much about the topic of drug use in public spaces, actually. Yes. That's very sad, because there was one thought I had, but couldn't tell. The problem with the toilets, for example, when there is vandalism and when there is drug use, we talked about when we were talking about children's toilets, and there shouldn't be drug use, totally. But it's not a user's problem, because the state should make sure to get help to the people using, and not just make the toilets more safe, like in a military way safe. Right. So when we are talking about that issue, you always have to keep in mind the real problems are the people using drugs, but not getting enough help to them.
Is there then a solution? Is the toilet a good place to find that help?
Maybe, because you have to clean the toilet most of the times. And I think it's a good ground to get a corporation running for social services, for example, because the users are going there, and this is a nice place where you can maybe pick them up and offer them for a safe use examples,
right.
And have a first conversation to get them into the help system. It needs a lot of trust building and a lot of talk, but it's a good start, because this is where they go, and this is where social services should start, maybe.
Sure. Or maybe the toilets being the issue of drug use in toilets isn't a toilet issue, it's a lack of places for safe drug use issue.
Exactly.
And maybe those are actually a lot easier to build than toilets, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Sophie Menzel from the Das Buschfunkbündnis, better known now as the toilet promoter, on the panel. Did you want to respond to that?
Actually there are new projects coming up on the Leopoldplatz. They want to have a toilet with 2 persons in front of it. I don't know if it's really social workers or street workers. And I'm really curious how does this work. I'm just living next to it, so I want to visit it every day.
You can report to me.
And they want to build as well an info point. But I'm curious as well if the info point is only to know which street is where, or for the people who needs help, like where can I sleep or where can I go to take my drugs, for example.
Did you want to wrap up with any last thoughts?
I think I want to end like I start. I think everybody has to talk about the situation about the toilets. And as well to write the politicians, to write the quarters and the Bezirke, to say where it's important to have a toilet and to improve the situation. And if everybody's talking about it, we can improve a lot of.
And so when we want, is there a process you recommend for us to complain about this? When we say this place needs a toilet, for instance, or
my recommend is. What I said already, talk with the responsible people, just write them. I think we write a lot of letters on the Senat of Mobility. We have a great Brieffreundschaft. To write the people who are working in these places and to say we need their toilet and could we improve the situation. And as well to complain about the fees, and to say, hey, that's against our constitution that was people who not able to pay doing while standing have to pay, and the others not.
Right. So in order to make sure we end with a female voice, I'm going to ask the other man on the panel to give his rap now. Roland Stimpel from Deutsche, the Fachverband Fußverkehr Deutschland, Fuß e.V., Fuss, fantastic name. Any last thoughts on the use of public space?
One general thing about we talked about regulations and whether there are too many regulations. What's a good regulation? In my opinion, a good regulation is one which protects weaker and more passive people against aggressive and stronger people. In any way, whether the stronger people is a car driver who's too fast, whether it's an e-scooter driver on the sidewalk, whether it is whether it is a guy who offers drugs but makes fear to people who in other circumstances would cross Görlitzer Park, but now just don't do it. I don't want any no-go areas. European culture is having complete city with no-go areas. So there may be no-go areas which are privatized, which are business, where you all have to pay to get in it all. But no-go areas by fear, by non-regulation, are as bad as that. So enforce regulations in the interest of the weaker people and of the people who have to, for example, have a need to sleep at 10 o'clock and who can't because there's the Bluetooth box in the street before the sleeping room. Yeah. So it's good when the autonomous comes and shuts that down.
Right.
Yeah. If it's a nurse who has to get up at 5 o'clock next morning.
Okay. Good to sneak that one at the end there.
Thank you, Roland. Tuba Bodskurt from the Greens. What are your final thoughts?
We did not talk about, and I mean, it was me not talking about it because I didn't think of it before, is Berlin being a diverse city. Berlin's migrant economy is a huge asset in the city. And, it comes with some cultural quirks, I would call them, having, sales on the streets, street musicians, and people coming together on the streets is something that in different cultures is lived differently. And we should, make use of it more and should, further our understanding and our welcoming of these different quirks of different people from different areas of the world. And having in mind that only new people are coming, but we have a very migrant city, or had it before anyway. So, yeah, trying to see the asset, see the advantage of it, and making use of it. Yeah.
Right. So maybe it's not about shutting down the Bluetooths, but providing earplugs for Roland. I mean, that's there's a simpler solution.
Last thought. We often talk about Admiralsbrücke as a hotspot where people are coming together and it's very loud, and the young people from different areas of Germany or from Europe are coming there, just purposefully going there to have fun. And it all started again with the COVID pandemic, when people had needed to go out to come together with other people and party. And the people are complaining about the noise. I do understand that. But before, it was, mainly a migrant district. It was always loud. People are used to noise. I'm not saying per se that it's, people have to accept noise, but it comes, it is a big city. It comes with it. We have to understand that we have to adjust when we live in a bigger city and want to make use of all the advantages this big city is giving us. But on the other hand, we want to live as if we were in, a little village. We are not in a village. It's a huge city. It has, there needs some regulations for sure, but it will always come with these difficulties, with this, different interests coming together. And we as lawmakers will always have to, find a common space or have to weigh the different interests of the city. But it won't ever be for everyone's good. Right. There will always some party who is not happy. That will always happen.
Right. Whenever there's a party, someone's unhappy. Yes, that's what I've noticed. And they're telling me, they're throwing water buckets on me. We're going to end on that note, I think. Joel, you want to read that copy there?
Sure. This event is part of a project, Europe Behind the Headlines, which is a cooperation between the European Academy Berlin and the podcast Radio Spaetkauf, Berlin's news in English.
For more Radio Spaetkauf, you know where to find us. We're on the internet. We'll have links to everyone here in the show notes on our blog as well. If you want to get involved with Radio Spaetkauf, with Europäische Akademie Berlin, or with Podfest Berlin, that's all available to you via the internet, or just come by House of Color and say hi, and we'll figure out a way. Well, we'll let you use our toilet, and we'll turn down the music if you tell us it's too loud. One more time, a round of applause for all of our guests and for the audience here tonight.
Spaetkauf. Berlin News in English.